Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are turning our attention to the one profession that literally allows all other civilization to exist. Farming.
Right. It's the original job, the one that, connects us to the very cycle of life.
And yet, and this is the crazy part, it is globally fundamentally broken.
It's the ultimate irony, isn't it? I mean, every single culture across history has recognized how important this is.
Of course.
You see it right here in North America with Thanksgiving. It's all about giving thanks for the harvest and originally acknowledging the indigenous people who shared that knowledge.
And if you look globally, especially in emerging economies, these are still the biggest dates on the calendar.
Oh, absolutely.
Think of Makara Sankranti or Pongal in India. These aren't just holidays.
No, they're society-wide acknowledgments that, hey, our survival is directly tethered to the harvest every single year.
And this isn't just, some modern sentimentality. Our analysis today actually pulls directly from ancient wisdom to frame this problem.
Yeah, we're looking at the words of the Tamil Sage Valluvar, written centuries ago in the Thirukural. And he elevates the farmer to the absolute center of the world order.
He makes this claim about freedom and self-sufficiency that is just incredibly powerful, suggesting that any non-farming life is somehow reliant. What was that first quote again?
It's so direct and uncompromising. They alone lead a life who live by farming. The rest of all follow its subservient existence.
A subservient existence.
It's a statement about, existential dependence. It puts the person who creates the food at the very top of the social hierarchy.
And the second quote is maybe even more crucial for our economic discussion today because it defines the farmer's structural necessity for everyone else.
He calls them the foundation, the essential mechanism. Farmers form the linchpin of the world, for they support all the rest who cannot till the soil.
The linchpin, that word is key.
It is.
Farming isn't just an industry. It's the structural precondition for everything else. For trade, for technology, for cities, for culture.
But here's the central problem we're diving into.
Right.
Despite feeding the world's, 8+ billion people, the agriculture sector is facing what our source material calls serious doldrums.
That source is a report, Farming and Agriculture Industry Woes. Keep the farmers happy, a global appeal. And it paints a bleak picture.
It's a crisis of viability. You have widespread poverty, crushing indebtedness. The whole global system that's designed to feed us is structurally unhealthy.
So our mission today is to unpack this fundamental disconnect. Why is this foundational linchpin industry struggling so badly?
And critically, why do farmers globally struggle to capture a fair, sustainable price for their absolutely essential labor?
We had to start with the history.
Yeah.
Because for millennia, control over agriculture was power.
It was the core source of it. If you look at the early civilizations, Mesopotamia, the Roman Empire, their stability, their growth, it was all based on collecting grain and taxes from farmers.
Landowners were the aristocracy. They wielded all the influence.
Exactly. But while the landowners and the rulers got rich, the reality for the average person, the one actually doing the work,
it was subsistence, wasn't it? Just survival.
That's absolutely right. Through the medieval periods, farming was about keeping your family alive and, meeting your obligations to the local lord. Real financial wealth was strictly for the people at the top.
Then the Industrial Revolution hits, and for a brief moment, it looked like the farmer might actually prosper.
It was a massive inflection point. Suddenly, you have widespread mechanization, scientific fertilizers, better transportation, storage, large-scale irrigation.
All at once.
All at once. And all of it combined caused crop productivity to just explode. It increased several-fold.
So for a short, shining period, farming became a genuinely lucrative business.
It did. But that golden age, it carried this terrible poison pill inside it. The very forces that delivered all that efficiency.
Globalized markets, colonial trade.
Those were the exact same mechanisms that destroyed long-term profitability for the masses of farmers. The efficiency created a massive, sustained global surplus. And that surplus immediately created fierce, often fatal competition for markets.
This wasn't peaceful competition.
No, not at all. The instability the author points to actually fueled colonial wars and political revolutions throughout the 19th and 20th centuries.
So the farmer went from being this respected, necessary linchpin of local society to just another competitor in a massive, cold, global supply chain.
Precisely. They were forced to compete with these new emerging economic heavyweights.
The high-velocity industries.
Right. Automobiles, steel, oil, textiles, Farming suddenly had to compete with them for investment capital and, crucially, for manpower.
And it was a competition, and agriculture was, well, fundamentally structured to lose.
Which brings us to the price squeeze.
The commoditization trap. This is at the core of why farmers just can't get sustainable prices.
It comes down to the nature of their output. Farm products they're often inherently undifferentiated.
Meaning a ton of good corn from Iowa is basically indistinguishable from a ton of good corn from Brazil.
Exactly. You have very little room for branding or product differentiation. It's not a luxury car or a specialized piece of software, it's corn.
And if the product is undifferentiated the moment you have any surplus supply,
Which is frequent in an efficient global market.
the market price is instantly pushed down towards the bare minimum cost of production.
Right. But here's the squeeze. While the prices they get for their crops are falling or flat, the prices for their inputs,
The fertilizer, the fuel, the machinery, the labor,
all of that is constantly being driven up by inflation from those other booming high-velocity sectors.
they're squeezed from both directions. It's structurally impossible.
And the pain is global, but it looks a little different everywhere. If you compare, say, the Western dilemma, let's focus on the U.S. with the Eastern crisis, the scale of the struggle changes.
Okay, so in the U.S., the average farm is actually pretty large, around 200 acres.
Relatively large, yeah.
But agriculture as a whole accounts for less than 10% of GDP and under 5% of employment. It sounds manageable, but they're still failing.
They are. Despite that scale, the sector's in decline. You've got unsustainable crop prices, uncertain and increasingly severe weather, a reduction in subsidies, and this inability to attract and retain the next generation.
The data is just stark. The source notes that farm bankruptcies in the United States have been on a steady rise year after year for the past few decades.
It's a failed business model for too many. Now, switch that lens to the Eastern crisis. Asia, other agri-dominant emerging economies.
Here, the roots of the trouble are centuries deep, right?
Centuries. Colonial taxation, catastrophic famines, neglect of essential infrastructure like irrigation.
And the scale challenge is just immense. Because of generational property divisions, the average farm size in many of these countries is less than 25 acres.
And often much, much smaller. Our source stresses that this is practically financially unsustainable.
Just can't do it.
You can't achieve the returns or use modern machinery efficiently on a plot that small. The only path forward requires massive state support and modernization.
The human cost here is it's beyond tragic. The source points out that debt-ridden farmers committing suicide is a common tragedy routinely reported in many Eastern Bloc agri-dominant economies.
It's a crushing reality, and that despair is being accelerated by modern policy trends.
The free market capital efficiency theory ideals.
Exactly. Governments are pressured to slash subsidies and loans.
So they're forcing this incredibly fragile sector to compete head-to-head with those mighty high-tech industries. No safety net.
And the result is immediate. Political instability spikes, and you see mass migration into already overcrowded cities. This hurts the growth prospects of every other sector.
So if we zoom out, this isn't just a sad story about poor rural communities.
Not at all. It's an economic headwind for everyone. There's a confounding effect where the lopsided accumulation of resources in just a few high-profit sectors like tech and finance.
It acts like a giant siphon.
Powerful siphon, yeah. It drains human capital, talent, and money away from these critical, essential industries like agriculture.
And we've seen what happens when those foundational sectors break down. I mean, you only have to look at regions in the U.S. that were once wealthy industrial centers.
The old steel belts in Pennsylvania, cities like Gary, Indiana, or Detroit.
Right. They now appear pathetic and gloomy. The collapse of a core industry leaves these decades-long social and economic scars that impact everyone.
And what's crucial to understand is that agriculture can't just innovate its way out of this problem like a tech firm.
Why not?
Because traditional industries are, as the source says, stuck with the natural limits of returns to scale and assets.
You can iterate software almost infinitely. You can't iterate a carrot past its physical constraints, or a cow past its biological limits.
The author notes the inherent limits. Farmers can't supply plastics-laden food or expect us to happily eat petrochemicals as nutritious food. We demand natural products, but we expect unnatural, high-velocity returns.
And when farmers have tried to push past those biological limits,
Like feeding cattle hormones or using certain gene-engineered crops.
it often leads to catastrophic consequences.
The mad cow disease incident is the definitive example of this. It was an attempt to maximize returns through unnatural means, and it failed spectacularly because it introduced this profound, unknown biological risk.
And when the fear spread, the entire sector pay the price.
You can't just upload a patch or recall a product. They had to slash and burn 4.5 million cattle to try and assuage consumer fear.
It's a perfect demonstration that agriculture cannot compete in the same way the knowledge economy can. Without some kind of regulation to reconcile this disparity, it's just set up to perennially suffer.
So we need a solution. And this brings us to what's called the middle ground. The argument is that the farm sector needs to be freed from two opposing forces: the frenzy of free markets and the frozen state machinery of overregulation.
So farmers shouldn't be subject to crushing state controls, but they also shouldn't be thrashed by mean market competition.
Exactly. And what's fascinating here is how this challenges the most common political critique.
That farm support is just a wasteful drain on the treasury.
Right. The counter is that supporting the sector is actually smart fiscal policy, a tacit Keynesian program. The investment generates a powerful economic multiplier effect that pays back the urban industrial economy many times over.
Okay, let's drill down on that mechanism, because this is the core of the solution. How exactly does that money flow back to the urban economy?
It starts with investment in the agrarian economy, subsidized loans, price supports, infrastructure, safety nets like healthcare.
Okay.
That money does not stay in the rural economy. It is immediately activated and flows right back to those high-velocity sectors.
So be specific. A farmer gets a subsidized loan.
Yeah.
What happens to that cash?
Immediately, that farmer using it to pay interest back to banks and insurance companies, mostly urban institutions. They buy fuel from oil and energy companies. They buy a new tractor or combine.
And the cash hits the balance sheets of manufacturers, steel producers, and construction companies.
It is an immediate, quantifiable transfer of capital right back to those urban, high-velocity sectors.
So the stability of the rural economy acts as a pump, ensuring continuous demand for the products and services made in the cities. It's a closed-loop system.
It is, and the long-term benefits are huge. This investment sustains agri output, which keeps food prices affordable for the urban labor force. It makes farming viable again, which can attract the younger generation back to the land.
And that slows the unsustainable population growth in overcrowded cities.
It fosters what the author calls a renaissance in agriculture, one that combines traditional wisdom with modern science.
So the takeaway is that the decline in agriculture is stunting economic growth everywhere, in both the developed and emerging worlds. Protecting the sector isn't a handout.
It's an economic necessity. We need policy that treats farmers as essential partners in growth, for all 8+ billion of us.
We started with that ancient wisdom of the farmer as the linchpin, and we're ending with the modern economic argument for why we have to protect them. The key takeaway for you is that structural stability for food production requires strong safety nets. It requires policy that acknowledges this fundamental competitive disparity.
It's about designing a system for resiliency, not just for abstract efficiency.
So, based on this idea of the economic multiplier effect investment flowing immediately back to urban treasuries, let's leave you with a final thought.
Okay.
Which specific investment, if it was implemented in your country today, say, guaranteed health care for rural workers, or a massive investment in rural energy infrastructure, which one do you think would offer the fastest and strongest return on investment back into the urban industrial economy? Something to mull over as you wrap up this deep dive.